Wait a second. Something isn't right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to STARCASTERS. Our cameras are not on. That's my fault, but we are here. You'll just look at our little 8-bit things. I forgot to set something up before going live. That's my bad, guys.
It's all right.
I will correct that now. How's everybody doing? We got some people in the chat. Welcome, Katrino, Tim, Scott, Sneed. Let me just get our cameras going. Where is it this one? Oh, I know what to do. My bad.
How's everyone been?
Here we are. We're in. All right. Great.
Nice.
I've been pretty good. How have you guys been for the last 2 or 3 weeks since the last
Yeah,
episode?
good.
Yeah, I've been pretty
Not much
good, I
change.
think.
Any regrets about your choice of Glup Shido characters from the last episode?
Not yet.
Yeah,
No,
I'm
I'm
happy
pretty
with
happy
mine,
with them. Yeah.
I think I'm still disappointed in Gabriel's lack of knowledge in obscure Star Wars
Obscure movie
characters.
Yeah,
characters.
I didn't grow up watching them, so I don't have the same, experience.
You've not rewatched them enough where the minor scenes are burnt into your head.
Yeah, I can't trust you unless you know the name of the mouse droid from A New Hope. I don't know the name of the mouse droid. Anyways, welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome
All
to the
those mechanic
podcast.
droids in Phantom Menace. That I mean, they have a game. They have a whole game.
Oh, the
spin-off
pit droids.
just for them. Yeah, the little pit droids. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought for a second there, I thought you were talking about the little thing that's like torturing the Gonk droid in episode 6 with like the thing
Yeah, that's
burning
what
its
I
feet. I thought that's what you were
That
talking
needs a
about.
game. That needs its own game just for
Yeah,
that.
Star Wars Droid Torture Simulator.
Yeah.
Pain points.
Welcome
Yeah.
back to Starcasters, everybody. The best Star Wars Legends podcast on the platform, I think. I'm not really, I'm assuming. I don't know if there are any others.
Nah, we're claiming it.
We talk about obscure old Star Wars material that most people don't seem to care about anymore, but we love it. And today we have some really interesting stuff to talk about. The old school Tales of the Jedi, the original Knights of the Old Republic comics that inspired Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. We read through one of the arcs, so we're not talking about the entire series. We're just talking about one arc. We'll talk about later arcs down the line, much like we do with the other stuff. So before we hop into that, we'll talk briefly about Star Wars news a little bit. Gabriel, you mentioned a couple of things that matter in the Disney canon.
Yeah, so there's been a few things. There was a panel on like the novels and comics. So one of the things that's happened recently, the young adult romance novel has released, Eyes Like Stars, and they were talking about how they plan to do more genre novels. So as much as there's going to be more romance novels, they're going to do other genre stuff as well. So we could, have a thriller novel, a horror novel, stuff like that could be coming.
Death Troopers
and that's
3.
like the new initiative. So, I think some cool stuff might come from that. We've got a new novel been announced, an adult novel called Twin Crossroads, which is written by Beth Revis, I think she's called, and she wrote the Jin Erso novel, and she also wrote The Princess and the Scoundrel. The interesting thing about that novel for us Expanded Universe fans is that all of the stories that it's going to do have happened in Expanded Universe books. So it's mainly about Luke training Leia in the way, in the ways of the Force and as a Jedi. Well, we've had, them doing a bit of Jedi training in the Expanded Universe. We've had Leia's, a Jedi story. Also, them dealing with their parents' history, finding out about their parents, Padme and Anakin. We've had that in the Darkness trilogy. And the other thing that I think is especially interesting is that we're going to see in canon how the Rebels take Coruscant from the Empire, which happens in the X-Wing books. So I'm very interested as to how that's going to, turn out. And then there's just some comics, like there's some new High Republic comics and covers for the Kylo Ren series that's coming. And that's about it, really, though. Nothing in terms of film or television.
GLR, any
No.
thoughts?
Well, we knew that we were gonna see Leia getting trained eventually because it was mentioned in the films, but it's cool
It
that
was
we're now
in
gonna
The Rise of
see
Skywalker.
yeah, we're now gonna see the canon interpretation of what that means, and I just wonder how similar it's gonna be to the EU. Like, I guess they
From what
probably
I-
will make it completely different. There's nothing that
Yeah.
will bind up to the EU.
I mean, one of the things we know that the author, what she said she got to do, that she was very shocked, she got to show where Leia got her kyber crystal from, and she said she
know
was
what-
surprised they let her do that.
I wonder if it's going to
which-
be Ilum.
Maybe. I wonder how they. I mean, I suppose that'll be an interesting
It's
story
always
as well.
ominous when an author is surprised to your level of freedom that they're allowed in a story.
Yeah.
That's like the worst kind of thing you want to hear from an author. It's like, oh, they actually let me like write things. Like,
Yeah,
I
but
have to
that
follow like the
that
the
actually
tiny
goes
script I
back
was given.
even to the 90s. Like authors would be like, "Can I do
Yeah.
this? Can I do this?" I'll tell you one thing though. I'm actually so sick of like alternative material covering like Luke and Leia and like original trilogy adjacent stories because it's like either give me like a Luke TV show or stop talking about him. Like I've already
That
read a
exactly
bunch
ties
about
in
Luke.
to today's what we're covering today, because I was reading one of the stories or one of the letters that come at the back of the comics, and I guess this the issue I was reading, it's on Internet Archive, must have been a reprint, because it's a letter that's saying it's from a guy who's read the first two issues, and this was in issue one. And he was saying like, he's so glad that we're finally moving away from the OT characters. Like he's so bored of everything being like Luke and Leia and Han, and it's like we're finally getting like something new that feels so different, and that's what he liked about Tales of the Jedi. So I guess we're getting a rehash of what they went through in the late '90s, where
For
we are just
sure.
getting bored of this same thing over and over.
Well,
Like
that's what happened, with the novels. People were, I mean, the main thing people were sick of was that they weren't telling interesting stories with them. That's why the new Jedi Order happened, because people were just complaining that it was the same story over and over and over, and there was nothing interesting being done with those characters. Luckily, the EU had the balls to do the interesting things with those characters. They don't really now, probably because, I mean, they did for the sequel films and they messed it up so badly that they're too scared, to touch them ever again and to try something interesting with them. So now, my problem, as you were saying, Evan, with like novels about Luke, my problem is that I want to enjoy like a Luke story, but I know like if you read a comic or a novel about Luke, nothing important is going to happen because they never let anything important happen in these stories. So
you're
they always
choosing to
try and
waste your
overstate the
time.
importance. Yeah, you're choosing to enjoy a story, which it might be a good story, but ultimately nothing of substance.
It'll
usually
have no
happens.
stakes.
Yeah, the worst is with the comics. They did a series after Return of the Jedi, and I read the first few issues as it was coming out, and I knew when I decided to stop buying it and when I thought I am wasting my money was when there was an issue of Luke and Han fighting battle droids in clone trooper armor. And I remember putting it down. I'm never buying this series ever again. I quit. Like, what is this story? And nothing of substance happens. And it seems it sets up like a conflict with another like species that never goes anywhere because the series got cancelled. So there was just no point in the story at all because nothing important happens.
And it's like if I'm going to read something about Luke or Leia or whatever, I'm going to choose Legends because I know Disney is not going to let them do anything meaningful with these characters because they might want to do something with them, but they won't do anything with them because they don't want to do anything with them. So if it involves like Luke or Han or Leia or whatever, and it's not like a Disney Plus show or something, I'm not interested. I would watch like a Tales of Luke Skywalker animated series. I would watch a live action like something post Return of the Jedi, but I'm not going to read a book about how Luke trains Leia because I could get a better version of that in Legends that has higher stakes and better
It's a
characterization.
shame that they've kind of abandoned the High Republic a bit after the Acolyte performed like it did, because at least that was Disney trying to do something where they could have a bit more freedom than one they're locked
There's nothing
into.
right now. It's a shame because the series ends with the promise of like they set up another story with there's this sort of guy who used to be a Jedi, and then what happens in the High Republic sort of turns him bad. He still helps them out because he has problems with the villains of that series, but then he escapes at the end, and one of our main characters goes off to find him, which is obviously ends with the implication that the next story is going to be him and this dark Jedi, and that could be an interesting story of whatever happens with them. And they've said that they would do that and that there is more High Republic coming. Everyone's disappointed though because the only thing that's been announced is a comic, and that has nothing to do with any of that stuff that was set up. So we all want that story, as we've made it clear. I am a big, I think as much as I don't like the Acolyte, the High Republic initiative I think was like the best thing Disney has done. It's a shame that we've not got anything more from it yet. Ever since it ended, their output has slowed down so much. Like they were doing so many novels and comics, and so many. I think they had a good run for a few years of like really good stuff coming out.
It was the most creative stuff they'd done in a while, because they weren't shackled to like what they had before,
Yeah, they
so
could
they
do
could
anything.
have complete
Yeah.
freedom. And it was interesting that there was this like multimedia push, like suddenly the games were referenced in it. I know like the second Jedi game, like that has like a whole arc that has a High Republic character in it. That comes like there's been some time travel stuff in that game to make that work.
He got
Which was a
frozen.
bit weird.
He got frozen,
and then you time
yeah.
travel at some point or like go into his memories. I can't quite remember how it worked.
Yeah, you find out about like his backstory. It's because Cal can do that thing where he can sense like the past of like objects and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He does that
You
and
do like
finds
a
out
more
some stuff.
in-depth version of that to actually go to that era.
Yeah.
To be fair, Legends did time travel stuff.
Oh
too,
yeah, for
so-
sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it was
Jason-
cool that there was this
Jason
kind of
can do that.
multimedia direction. I mean, if the Acolyte performed well, I'm sure they would still be pursuing that. I think that really kind of pot some dampeners on it.
I think it's the first Jaden Core book, like the protagonist from Jedi Academy. He got 2 novels. The first one, the villain is straight up like a Sith Lord from like 5,000 years prior who like time travels hyperspaces into like New Republic era. So it's not like Legends didn't do that shit too.
I always think of as well in Legacy of the Force, Jason thinks, oh no, am I making the same mistakes as my grandfather? So he sort of time travels to watch his Order 66, and then he makes a decision, yeah, I am making the same mistakes, but I'm going to do it better. Is the decision that he makes.
I actually love that. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so
Literally
Anakin.
Anakin.
But come on, this is Anakin's grandson. Like all of,
Yeah.
especially like his dark side choices. All of it feels like that same like Skywalker bravado like coming up in him. He's like, yeah, they failed, but I'll win now.
Yeah. The
do
mistake
it
was
better.
killing younglings. I just won't do that, and then I'll be fine.
Which he didn't. He didn't kill any younglings.
Yeah, but he does have the sort of, would I do it if I had to? And he sort of thinks maybe I would.
Well, his
Yeah.
grandfather made the same decision, so
Yeah.
not surprising.
What are you getting?
Well, they did the same thing they did with Kylo. They
You wanna
turned
be
him
on
into
camera?
a Darth Vader fanboy. They really did. He cosplays as him. He dresses like him. He watches him and mimics like what he was doing. It's so funny.
It's a dark side thing to do. I mean, in the Frida Nad Uprising,
you always
which
look
are some
to
of the
the-
ones we covered. Like there's a guy who just dresses up as Frida Nad, basically.
See, the Sith. This is what I mean. The Sith are edgy cosplayers. They're
Yeah, that is
cosplayers.
exactly what they are.
They cosplay as their favorite
I
Sith
relate.
lords, and they get really like
Yeah.
edgy and into
Dude,
it.
Kaitis had drip. I'm just saying it.
It
Kaitis
is a
is.
sick costume.
I like that he didn't wear a mask a lot. I like that it was just like the jagged, pointy like breastplate and cape, and then just his like Sith eyes and 90s
it's,
haircut, his
It's
Leon
some
hair.
armor, armor that I think looks really cool. Because it is
Yeah.
very Vader-y, but it's like like you said, he's not like he's hiding or anything. He's like he's not got anything to hide, I suppose. Although he doesn't use a red lightsaber until the second last book, which is a shame.
That is a shame.
Mm.
Well, I guess
Frida Nad like wears medieval armor essentially. Like when they
I
find his
love
body,
that.
he's like dripped out like a knight.
XR Kun
Like, his
has
lightsaber looks
depictions like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
Like,
think there's
he has swords, doesn't he? At the end of these comics, actually, I think he gives like
Yeah.
some swords to 2 of his followers.
and then Ajunta Paul used swords, right?
Yeah, but was Ajunta Paul before lightsabers, or were they like proto
I think
sabers at that
I
time?
think he was before lightsabers because there's that
Yeah.
quest in KOTOR where like you have to go collect his sword. I think.
Mm-hmm. And we haven't got actually. Yeah, think about that. These comics that we're covering now, they haven't got to much to that technology or like lack of technology yet, have they?
I don't know if
Well, I
proto
suppose- I
sabers
think-
were a concept when this series was.
Yeah, when lightsabers
Maybe.
were a thing, but I think the idea is that it's sort of all in the visuals. In that they ride dragons and and shit like that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very it's very high fantasy more than a lot of other Star Wars is, because Star Wars is this beautiful blend between sci-fi and fantasy. Yes, it is like more fantasy, but there's a lot of sci-fi elements. KOTOR, Tales of the Jedi, I think, is way more fantasy than sci-fi.
For
That's
sure, yeah.
that's something I noticed is that the original Star Wars was inspired by Flash Gordon, and this series gave me very like big Flash Gordon vibes, like in the art style and the visuals. So I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it did feel like it was going back to like Star Wars was inspired by Flash Gordon, and then this also feels inspired by Flash Gordon. I love the art
Yeah,
style,
I
by
felt
the
that
way.
in the visuals for sure. Like the art style, yeah. It's very different from, like, say, Dark Empire is very artsy and it's quite striking in that way. It's different from the comics at the time. I'll say Tales of the Jedi is very much like a 90s comic, like it has that look, but it's still very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the style of this. I mean, George loved the art of Tales of the Jedi, as I mentioned before. I don't think he really knew anything about the story, but he
don't
really
think he
liked the
cared.
artwork.
Yeah, I think he just flipped through the artwork and thought that's cool.
Yeah, this looks cool.
Yeah.
As he did with Dark Empire.
I think the
I
art's
don't think
better
he-
here than Dark Empire, actually.
Yeah, I agree. I like this more. I think for me, the big thing, like my big issue with Dark Empire, is that it's pre-established characters, but it looks
That don't
nothing
look,
like
yeah,
them.
yeah. I'll say the
This
faces
is
are much
new
better
characters.
in this, but Dark Empire had like
Except-
those amazing spreads that looked like so good for like battle scenes and stuff, and there's
True,
nothing
yeah.
like that in this. Like, there's no like two-page
But-
spreads or anything.
So, except my issue is, which we'll have to talk about, is Nomi Sunrider, her appearance changing
Yes.
between, from this, young, beautiful woman, like really innocent looking, and I think that's really symbolic of her story. I think she is supposed to seem very much the stereotypical traditional, female, the wife, I think that is on purpose. by Reach
70s,
to-
like, love interest, yeah.
Yeah, she's very much got that. But then he creates this character that is not a real person. This type of person doesn't exist, and then forces her into a really having to fight and having to be a Jedi, which I think is quite a good story. And I like that her look in the in the Saga of Nomi Sunrider. It very much is symbolic of her story. I think it very much fits her story. The way she's drawn afterwards, I don't think really fits. I mean, it's fine. It just, I think her look in the Saga of Nomi Sunrider really matched her character really well. And then suddenly,
That's
the
the thing,
awful
though, like,
hairline.
Because I
in the
just
one.
flipped through it but in in her original free comic arc, she is only like the young looking blonde girl for the second book of her arc, because hers is issue 4, issues 3 through 5 of Tales of the Jedi. It's only issue 4, I think, where she actually looks like the the young fresh faced 70s heroine, but in her first introduction, she is like the receded hairline, red hair, like her later look. So I'm not sure like what's gone on. How did it only had one issue that is not even her introductory issue?
The sort of receding hairline look is kind of, I think that's what sticks.
I think she's meant to be near human, isn't she? Like I was trying to read, like, is she meant to be a different species? Because it's almost, she's almost got like horns, but like they're horns of hair in front of like her.
Oh
hairline.
yeah, she's human. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
a bizarre.
I think
That's just a
Onderon.
bizarre hairline.
Onderonians are all human.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I know what her daughter ends up looking like, and she is very
Still human,
normal,
yeah.
human-looking
Such an
person.
odd
I just
hairline.
think, yeah, I mean that's the thing. I just think she
But like
just
what you were
looks
saying about her
very-
being like innocent in her arc, I totally agree. But that would make more sense for issue 3 of Tales of the Jedi, which is her introduction, and that's when she's force sensitive. She doesn't want to be a Jedi. Her husband's a Jedi, which is glossed over. Again, this is prequel, so at this point it's understood that Jedis can just marry. That's not
Yeah, well, that's
not
what-
really mentioned.
That nobody thought until Attack of the Clones that would even be a
that wasn't a
concept.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why it's so much. I think it was such like a big change that everyone was like, "What?" In the expanded universe, because it was just a part of the law that Jedi had families. Like, that's just
Yeah.
It was actually like a big part of the law for a long time that Jedi had families, and that it even might even be stronger in certain families and stuff like that. Then suddenly Attack of the Clones came out, and everyone suddenly had to think, "Oh no, how are we gonna recontextualize this?"
Yeah, but spoilers for the story. Her Jedi husband dies, and then so she has to become a Jedi to avenge him, essentially, and like fulfill his goal. His original goal was just to give presents to his master, right? That was like her original quest, I
Yeah.
guess, was to
Give him
complete
some
that.
crystals.
It's like, I want to give some crystals to his master. But so she becomes a Jedi off the back of that. So how she looks in her second issue would make more sense for the first issue, where she has this innocent look, and then she becomes more muscled and more, don't want to say masculine, but more, more of a Jedi later,
more of a fighter,
later on.
stronger.
Yeah, more of a fighter, yeah.
Yeah, because she is a woman. She's still going to look a little bit feminine, but
Yeah,
she
of course,
has
of
to.
course.
She has to, shed some of that, to be stronger, and be a fighter.
Get that
Which I do.
Ronda
I like
Rousey
that in a
how,
story.
how the art, like how that happened, like it's such a strange mistake in art direction to occur. Like I get it, they were obviously illustrated all at the same time because that's how you would save time when you're producing comics. But you'd think someone's overseeing the project and being like, "Oh, this is what she looks like." Everyone like
well,
follow this.
It could
it's
be
bizarre.
someone overseeing the project was the problem, because stuff like this happens all the
Maybe,
time
yeah.
where like publishers are like, can you make her less like this, and can you make her look more like this so it'll sell better? And then the guy who has the actual vision is like, I don't want to do that, and then he relents, and then at some point he gets control back. He's like, no, we're going back to the original design. This is not how she's supposed to look. You
Yeah.
know, there's
Yeah.
things like that
I mean,
all the
that
time.
could- Yeah, that could happen. And
Something
again,
like
you
that,
know,
probably.
like you said, you know, they might have been asked to try and make her more attractive in the second issue or something. Because I
Maybe,
think,
yeah.
you know,
That's
it
what
doesn't
seems like.
it doesn't happen with the male characters. You know, the male characters stay the same
They all
the
say
whole
the
way
same.
through.
I actually think everyone starts looking better proportioned and better by the time you get to the 5th issue, and especially for like the Freed and Nad uprising, it feels like they've kind of got the art style down. For like issues 1 and 2, they look a little bit funky. They got a little bit of that Dark Empire face going on, but obviously it doesn't look so bad because you don't know what these people are meant to look like anyway.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
Yeah. But yeah, it gets better as it goes. I say by the time they get to the Freed and Nad uprising, they've like locked in like what everyone's meant to look like and what they're going for.
You know, I did
Go on.
find interesting when you think about it. It's like each new arc has introduced like a new, you know, set of eyes that we follow. Like, you know, Freed and Nad Uprising, when you think about it, introduces that brother and sister, that are like, again, like Sith fanboys basically.
Yeah.
That, you know, they're like wanting to get all the relics and learn about them and stuff. It's interesting that it keeps adding in, you know, like new characters to follow. I guess if I had to critique it, I'm not sure. The brother and sister story, it must be a setup. I think it's set up for stuff coming later. I mean, I know it is. It seems to disrupt the Freed and Nad Uprising story a little bit. You know, you're following Nomi and Ulick and that whole big war, and then suddenly we keep cutting away to this brother and sister. Like, well, let's get this for, you know, all this, you know, Sith stuff. It's a bit disruptive.
Yeah, especially as it's happening, like it's so close to like everything else. It's all happening on Onderon in Isis, and it's all to do with the king.
Which, speaking of
Isis as well.
As such an enormous KOTOR fan, reading a comment and seeing about like Onderon and Duck Sun and reading about like the relation of the moon and whatnot was massive. And then the mention of like Isis, the city, all of that was just such a treat, because I had not read these before, but I've played KOTOR 2 a bunch of times. And I was like, yo, it's like coming home. What's up?
Yeah, it's so cool. Like any KOTOR fan, like you have to read these. They all, as we've said with the comics before, comics are really easy to read. You can finish an issue in like 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
You can blow through.
These are called Tales of the Jedi. It's 5 issues, the original one, and we were also covering the Freed and Nad Uprising, which was like a 2-episode.
And they're an easy read too.
2 comic special that came afterwards. Yeah, really easy reads.
You know, surprisingly, you know, like I think like Dark Empire is a hard read. Like Veach's writing is often really, you know, full of
That's what I was
explanations.
thinking. His writing is way better in this.
Yeah, it's way more like.
I still don't think it's
fluid and quick.
great, but it's
I do
much
agree.
more tolerable.
His dialogue is clunky. I mean, I pointed out like in the when we were talking before we went live, like there is literally Anakin's famous line, like, "Oh, what have I done?" Like after the character does something evil, like you know, that's literally like that is there, and this is before Lucas wrote the line. So if anything, Veitch was just mimicking, you know, how Lucas writes. So
it's true.
It feels
someone
very
even
Star Wars
Cave
in
and
that
loses
regard.
his arm, so it's like we know it's authentic Star Wars.
Yeah, and the thing I love that when like that happens, he goes like and then literally says they cut off my arm. I was just like, yeah, I saw it, bro. Like that's a great thing about
you know what that
visual
is?
media.
That's very, you know, that is very in a bad way for me, like Shakespeare. Like I always think of, I can't remember which play, but "I am slain" is like one of the funniest lines ever to me. It's like that. Yeah, I think it gets better when Kevin J. Anderson starts writing, because
He's a better writer.
I know he's a lot better. I do like his, but I know some people don't like, you know, Jedi Academy trilogy, but his Tales of the Jedi stuff is very popular, and I think it just gets, the characters get a bit more interesting and the story gets a bit more interesting. He definitely writes, you know, he doesn't do the same stuff that Veach does, which like I'm
Veach's
very much.
stories I mean, speaking of Shakespeare, like his is more tropey. Like it's literally Romeo and Juliet, like the first. Like the Ulick. How do you pronounce it?
Ulick Queldrama. Ulick Queldrama.
Drama.
Is it Droma?
Yeah, see,
I thought it was
it's
Drama.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought it was Droma, but it could be.
I don't know,
Ulic
dude.
Keldroma.
I've always heard it Drama, but I remember like 2 or 3 years ago, I was live with another YouTuber friend of mine, and I was talking about a Star Wars character. I called him Ulic Quel Drama, and for about 5 minutes, he thought I was messing with him. He did not believe me that was a real Star Wars character.
No,
he was
yeah.
like, "You're making that up, dude." I was like,
But,
"I
yeah,
am not."
I always find it funny reading, and then like hearing an audiobook or something, and or like hearing the authors talk about it and hearing the official pronunciation. Like I was thinking of the Vong, or the Yuzhen Vong. That's what they all call them. They're the Yuzhen Vong. I read the whole series as Yuzhen.
I've
Whole
always
series, I
called
did
it
the whole-
Yuzan. I've
Yeah,
always called it
yeah.
Yuzan
But it's
Vong.
but it's Yuzhen. And then I always think of
Cadus. It's
Pla-
Cadus, but I always pronounced it Darth
Cadus,
Cadus.
yeah. And then Plagueis, it's Plagueis, but James Luceno calls him Plagueis.
Jular
In
calls him
every
Plagueis.
interview.
I call it Plagueis. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
But
switch
that's why I was saying
because
you're very,
I know it's plague. Like obviously it just comes from plague, but then it's plague is, so it's Plagueis.
But here's the thing:
Yeah.
we hear Palpatine call it Plagueis, so we know Palpatine
know.
from his mouth. It has to be
Yeah, but,
Plagueis.
But as
It's
Lucas
really
said,
funny.
it's different dialects.
Yeah, because Count Dooku. I know.
Yeah. I think like it's funny though because like obviously James.
I'm not calling him
Luceno
Plagueis.
James Luceno watched it. He spoke to George about it and still calls him Plagueis.
The tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. It's just it doesn't sound right in my brain.
Yeah.
But back to
You
the.
know,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say just quickly. I don't know if you know this. I heard this, but I was just reminded of it today. One of the things that Luceno wanted to do, but Disney wouldn't allow him, which, he did the Plagueis novel. He wanted to do a sequel novel about Darth Sidious during Empire Strikes Back, and he probably would have been allowed to do that if it weren't for Disney, but they didn't allow him to do that novel, and that's probably partly why he decided to stop doing Star Wars novels, because his ideas, were being turned
Shot down. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been great.
I would have read that probably.
Yeah.
But speaking back to the writing of Tales of the Jedi, I kind of did myself a little bit of a disservice because I was reading that run almost like parallel, like I was going back and forth between that and the Mark Miller run of Marvel Knights Spider-Man because of a project that I'm working on right now. I'm doing another Spider-Man motion comic. I don't know if you guys know I did that.
Oh,
so
nice.
I'm doing another one of those. It's the Mark Miller
Is it
Marvel.
voice acting?
Yeah, I'm Spider-Man
Oh,
again.
nice.
But it's the Mark Miller run of Marvel Knights. So I've been like reading that and kind of getting a feel for it. And going back and forth between like exceptional writing and then Veach. Look, I think the writing is better than Dark Empire. But when you're reading something like like a page turner, like a really compelling comic page turner, like, all right, let me go back to Tales of the Jedi. I'm like, whoa, I don't
like Lucas, he's an ideas guy. Like some great ideas here, great world building, like a lot of new stuff. Like you're saying, it's more fantasy. You've got like the Beast Riders, Onderon, like all of this stuff that you probably love from KOTOR. That is, well, presumably because Reach is the writer, I presume it came all from him.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. But yeah, his actual the words he puts on the page, they are a bit lacking.
I think his dialogue, but especially his characters, I really don't like the way Veach does characters a lot of the time. The reason I have a lot of affection for these characters is I know where they go and I know what Kevin J. Anderson does with them, which is like amazing. Like I said, Nomi and Nomi's daughter and Ulic in Tales of the Jedi Redemption are like amazing. Kevin J. Anderson writes them so well. Veach doesn't. I don't think he has much depth to his characters. The problem is, he almost writes it like he does. If you know what I mean, like he sort of thinks what he's doing is like really good. And you read it and you're like, what are you talking about? It's really, what he writes as well. Like he sort of reminds me of, in the old like the original Spider-Man comics, Stan Lee talks to the reader so much. I feel like Veach is doing that sometimes.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah, but it doesn't work.
Boxes that describe because the boxes sometimes are describing like a character's thoughts, but then other times they are just exposition, and it doesn't tell you like when that switch is made.
Which
so that can
and
be
it feels too much like he's talking to me,
and
which doesn't work.
What's so frustrating about that is that comic books have the extreme advantage of being a visual medium, which means showing, not telling, which is the first rule of writing in general, should be like at the forefront of your mind. And he still manages to tell too much.
Tell everything, yeah.
In a visual medium.
Yeah.
You don't have to. You can show me.
But that's again a big thing with his dialogue. Like the dialogue is often describing what they're seeing, but like we can see what they're seeing because your artist has
Stop telling me. Show me.
But the type of stuff Veach does. This isn't a specific example, but this is the type of stuff, right? There could be a full panel of like a lightsaber battle, and he'll write in the bottom, "They fought," and you're like, oh, I can see that. You don't need to tell me.
Yeah, like I think there's literally a scene where it says like, "Oh, a missile hits their ship and they go down," and the entire panel is a missile hitting the ship and it crashing. No, like you didn't have that block of text, not needed because you've got this huge.
They cut off my arm.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like,
It's
I saw it happen with the axe, bro.
At least with Tales of the Jedi, it's not as overpowering as Dark Empire because like at least with this,
Dark Empire had it worse.
Yeah,
yeah, because in Tales of the Jedi, you read a sentence, you think, "Oh, that's dumb. You didn't need to tell us that." But Dark Empire. 3 paragraphs.
I mean, Dark Empire had Leia saying, "I can feel it with the Force." Like, yeah, we didn't have
iconic
with the Force.
Iconic line.
Wait, what is it again? What does she use? Jedi thing?
Force. What was that thing?
Thanks,
from
thanks, Veach.
Yeah.
Thanks, Veach.
I gotta make sure I describe it. It's not like.
He does introduce a lot of new things. I mean, I think they're new, like battle meditation, or these like new concepts.
I think
that
so,
come from
yeah.
him.
Battle meditation was Tales of the Jedi.
And to be fair, I never knew what battle meditation actually did until Veach has described it exactly, like word for word, what it does in this. But
Look,
it quells the dark side. Like, it basically
maybe
motivates like people to fight better.
Now I think about it, it might have been Zorn because I think it's what Sebayoth does it in the Thrawn trilogy.
I don't think it's called. Is it called battle meditation when he does it?
I don't know.
I don't think it is.
I'm not sure.
Maybe it's the same idea. Look,
I'll have to reread. Yeah.
It's literally called that in this. The Jedi Master, basically the Jedi Master. How does this universe works is really interesting. It's like Star Trek, where the Republic is still discovering new planets at this point, and they're like, if you're almost on the edge of space travel, we're just gonna go there and be like, "Yo, bro, here's some space travel. Here's a Jedi Master. He's gonna look after you now," and like that's how it works.
I wish
you just
there
get
was more of
assigned
that,
a Jedi Master.
I wish there was more of that in Star Wars. Like, I want to see the Jedi exploring the galaxy.
Me too.
And
I love
things.
that.
Yeah.
I don't think we get nearly enough.
Idea.
That's one of the reasons I've always been so salty we didn't get more adventures between episodes 1 and 2, because I wanted to see like Jedi adventures that weren't like during a Star War.
Yeah. I mean that idea as well, like the Jedi doing that, seeking new life. Like you said, like as much as it's like a similar idea to Star Trek, doing it a Star Wars way would be totally different. And you could tell some really interesting stories. I'm surprised it's pretty much not done. In like the High Republic, they talk a lot about how there was an era of people finding hyperspace lanes and finding planets and stuff like that. But that's not the era we're reading about.
No,
I hope
they
one day we
mention
can get that.
Actually, in
There's
this,
not
say, like,
much.
20,000 years ago, or like there was no hyperspace travel, but when they discovered it, that's when they started making like space stations at these like general.
Yeah,
There's not much content in the hyperspace war stuff.
No, in the High Republic, there's actually like a family that they got loads of money by a long time ago finding loads of hyperspace lanes. And like that's how people made a profit, by going out and thinking up hyperspace lanes. Like, that's the type of stuff I'd like to see. And like I said, I'd just like to see finding new planets. Even if it's some of the planets we've already seen in Star Wars, how they found it and what it was like originally it could be a really interesting story.
Yeah, and the reason I brought up Star Trek as well is I wonder, like, when the Republic is doing this exploring, do they have, like, is there a mantra? Because they mentioned this Onderon was discovering space travel. That's why they introduce themselves. Is there something like if they find a more primitive planet, or they like, oh, let's leave them alone, or they're like, now let's just go straight down there and freak them out, see what happens?
Do they have the Prime Directive or whatever the Star Wars version of that? Yeah.
I guess not, because like Tatooine, right? That's a primitive people, like the Sand people, and then they've just started colonizing it and putting farms there. And
but that's why I think it would be
water on a
it would be really
planet.
interesting to see Jedi doing it, because I think Jedi wouldn't go in like Star Trek. They wouldn't go in with a Prime Directive or anything like that. They would just land and they'd get involved in the culture and see what it's like, and they would be more flexible and more have the Jedi, because of their powers and their wisdom, mainly their wisdom, not the powers, can be very flexible and help people in interesting ways, which I think could be interesting.
There was a bit of a plot hole I noticed where this Jedi Master is Arca, isn't his name? So he sends his Jedi Knights. Yeah, he sends his Jedi Knights down, and this is the first time the Onderon people have like interacted with these Jedi Knights, or like it seems like any Jedi. Yet the Jedi Master Arca knows everything about Onderon. Like he knows the entire history, going back like hundreds of years to when they were primitive people and like fighting the beasts on Duxon and stuff like that. And I'm like, how did you know that if you've never interacted with them? And the comic opens up saying like newly discovered planet Onderon. So that's a little bit of a plot hole there.
He reads quick.
Yeah, that's why I've literally got a note being like he's a lore feed. He went straight onto Wikipedia first thing.
3 times speed audiobook.
This is something I've noticed just in general as a concept. A lot of people think about it like you have writers, you have artists, you have design, but even in writing, it breaks down into categories, because I've noticed that some people are really good at plot, character progression, and arcs, and then some people are really good at world building. And they're two completely different types of writing. Sometimes they even contradict. Like, I think Nolan is someone who is very big on like plot and characterization, Christopher Nolan, I mean, but I don't think he's very good at world building. Veach is clearly a world builder. Like, he is someone who is very imaginative and builds worlds, but then he inserts character arcs and plot progression more so as a necessity because they need to be there. Whereas there's a lot of writers who it's the progression, the character arcs that they are caring about, and then the world building is the afterthought because it needs to be there.
Veach's perfect job would be that guy who worked on the Star Wars website when he was just filling in like random glub shito like backstories. That would have been like his ideal job. Just coming up with like loads of world building for these guys.
Yeah, that would be Veach for sure. Whereas I think Anderson, I actually think Anderson's really good at both, but he definitely leans more towards the character side of things.
Yeah, especially when you think of Young Jedi Knights, which is very
Zahn's great
about
both.
The characters. Yeah,
some writers can do both.
And like people like
Zahn and Lucino were both.
Yeah, Zahn and Lucino. I mean, you think Zahn established... You have to think, people... If anyone ever, like, has anything bad to say about the Thrawn trilogy, I always think of, like... It's kind of like a bad-mouthing the original Star Wars film, because there would be no EU without the Thrawn trilogy. There would be no novels now, like, if that trilogy didn't happen, we wouldn't be having any of these novels. And, Lucino has done... we all love the prequel films. He has also done a lot of amazing work that when you read them makes you love it even more, because he adds so much to the world and the lore.
The Lucino books literally improve the prequel trilogy from their existence.
I can't go back to watching Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith without knowing like what's in the Plagueis book. Like that completely informs like my idea of the background of those films.
Cloak of Deception does the same for Phantom Menace.
Yeah, I think the difference as well is that he's not doing it from a place of, like, the fandom at the time was very, these films are awful. Lucino wasn't doing it from these films need fixing. He was doing it from, he enjoyed them, and he enjoyed that world, and wanted to add to it, which I think is why it works so well.
That is the best.
He didn't try to OT-ify the prequels. He was like, here's more prequels. Like,
because
the prequels have politics. I'm gonna make an entire book that's just politics,
and it slaps.
I think where it comes from is, he worked on the New Jedi Order and he loved that series. Then he wanted something different, and I think the prequels were perfect for him because it was Star Wars, but the world was so different that I think that excited him. This very different vision of Star Wars, the politics and all stuff like that. Again, I think it must have excited him because the New Jedi Order has a lot of politics, which kind of matches up well with the prequels, because so did the prequels. I think he jumped from one to the other because he did NJO. They finished it, and he was that's where he was fine to leave the original trilogy characters, and then he was excited by all the opportunities that the prequel trilogy gave, because the world building in the prequel trilogy is amazing, and he can add so much to it, and he does add so much to it.
Yeah, well said.
But,
Yeah.
For Tales of the Jedi, then I was talking about how I've actually forgotten. But basically, I was talking about the Jedi. So the Jedi are assigning one master to each new planet that they find. This Jedi master is pretty lazy. He just assigns his Jedi Knights to cover it for him.
It's their
His
trial.
Useless. His
Yeah,
useless
it is their
Padawans.
trial. It's interesting that at this point, it's not 1-to-1. It's not one master to one Padawan. It is he has 3 Padawan below him. Of course, this is before anything to do with the prequels, so we didn't know how the
because they're
Lucas
not
canon would handle
they're
it.
they're not Padawans, are they? You know, they're just
They're just Jedi Knights.
The same way.
This is a
in
part
young,
of their like training or like their knighthood, but it doesn't say what they are before knight. They aren't a Padawan.
Yeah, because there wasn't
Jedi.
There wasn't a knighthood because, for example, young Jedi Knights, they're Jedi Knights. They're just young Jedi Knights.
Did the term Padawan come from the Phantom Menace? Is that its original debut?
Wow.
Yeah, because it's nowhere before then. And for example, I said how they're Jedi Knights and young Jedi Knights. The new Jedi Order had to retroactively fix that. So they're not Padawans, but they're not Jedi Knights. And then they accidentally called them Jedi Knights early. So they had to then include a knighting ceremony in one of the novels, which is amazing, by the way.
Is that the Jaina
the whole
knighting ceremony?
Yeah, and Jason gets knighted, and so does Tahiri and Tenel Ka and Lowbacker. The whole crew gets knighted, and it's amazing. So I'm glad they did that. So I guess it's good in a way that change happened with the prequels because it's an amazing scene. But they wasn't, they weren't Padawans before. They were young Jedi. They were learners. But like I said, with young Jedi Knights, they are Jedi Knights. They're just young Jedi Knights.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
Does
sense.
MTD get knighted? I hope he does.
No.
Jedi Master.
I don't even know if I'm not sure
Yeah,
MTD
also.
is he even really ever mentioned in the NJO books?
I think he is. I think Lowbacker still has MTD, if I remember right. I'm not sure. Or maybe if he doesn't, I think people he understands people better and people understand him better.
Yeah,
I think,
I'd hope that they would learn his language after spending so much time with him.
Anyone watching who doesn't know what we're talking
Essentially,
about.
A translation job.
Anyone who doesn't go watch our Young Jedi Knight episodes to figure out who we're talking about.
Yeah, because I think Jaina for sure, and Jaina and Jason know the Wookiee language by New Jedi Knights. They're fluent. They can't speak in it, but they perfectly understand everything that he's saying. The same way Han and Leia learn over time.
Yeah, you'd hope so. So anyway, these young Jedi Knights, they're not this young in Tales of the Jedi, but they're sent down
they're
to on
20 or something.
they're
aren't they?
grown
It
men.
seems like that. Got 2 brothers, Ulick and Kai, and then a Twi'lek.
Yeah, speaking of the Twi'lek,
Tot.
I think it was supposed to be taught.
Yeah, okay.
How out of pocket was it for them to show up on Onderon and then immediately there's just species
I know.
racism out of nowhere?
Yeah.
What?
They were immediately
I was like,
no, we don't
what?
want any aliens here.
Yeah.
I was like, where is this
And the
coming
only reason-
from?
The only reason they don't arrest him is because he's a Jedi.
I don't-
They have to be like, no, he's a Jedi. He's with us, and they're like, oh, okay, we'll let him in this time.
I don't even think that that matters in this arc unless I missed it. There's just for some
No, it
reason
never
he's
comes
like
back. It
he's like,
literally
wouldn't
never
it be
comes
funny
back.
if they just
Yeah, they
attack
just
the
sort of-
Twi'lek Jedi for being a Twi'lek?
I guess it
What-
builds
sort of move on
on.
from it.
You're meant to kind of see that ISIS isn't the good guys at this point. It's been set up being like, oh, they kicked out all of they've been exiling people for hundreds of years, and it's meant to make you think oh, these Jedi Knights are idiots when they go to Isis and they go to the Queen, and she's like, hey, we've got these people outside the gates that we don't like. Can you go fight them for us? And then the Jedi are like, yeah, okay. Straight
Yeah,
away.
'cause
no
Well,
questions
it
asked.
says that, but it also says Kay and Tot are like, we don't trust her. There's a dark presence.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
And Ulick's like, nope, I was made master of this expedition. We're doing it.
it looks
Yeah.
like, get behind me.
Yeah, see, that's what you were saying about Veitch not being good at writing characters. I thought this entire time he was setting up Ulick to fall to the dark side because I knew that Ulick has this fall, but it never happens under Veitch. That was Kevin J. Anderson, like you said.
Yeah, I think-
so. He's inadvertently
think-
written Ulick to fall to the dark side, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I
seem-
just think Veitch
on
didn't
purpose.
think about it and just accidentally wrote him as an idiot. I hate to be so mean. I don't have a high opinion of Veitch, so that's probably.
No.
It sounds like we're
Yeah.
talking shit about Veach. I think Veach is great at world building, but what I think happened is
KOTOR doesn't exist without Veitch.
I
think
think-
that is
Yeah.
just the truth of it.
I like him. I actually think Dark Empire is a fun read, by the way, even though it's not good. But what I think
Yeah.
Veach was trying to do here, because again, I don't think characterization is his strong suit. I think he wanted the viewer to know that they were getting to a place who was like, okay, I'll just make them racist so that they assume they're bad. You know what I mean? I don't think he's great at character writing. What I think he was trying to do was, this is a really powerful, like badass OC, but he has to have a flaw. And his flaw is that he's arrogant and headstrong. But I don't think Veach connected why that would lead you to the dark side. I think he just thought the character needed to have a flaw so that he wasn't like a Gary Stu. Which
something you guys will
credit
find
to him for
interesting
thinking of that.
is that this, you might think of it and might recontextualize it for you. Imagine this as the prequels. That's what Veach wanted. He wanted to do the prequels. This is his prequels.
That's an extreme prequel.
Yeah,
Ultra
but
prequel.
Yeah.
Think of Ulick as Anakin because he wanted to do the story of Anakin. And obviously George said, no, that's what I'm going to do. Because,
In that regard, then, I guess we could take back what we said, because it seems like he would be writing Ulick to fall to the dark side if he's writing him in that way. To be like, oh, this is an arrogant, headstrong guy who's going to get in over his head.
But didn't Veach literally say he didn't want Ulick to fall to the dark side?
But he was very bizarre in that Kevin J. Anderson did that story with him, and then he said he ruined Ulick. And then, like, a year later, he said, oh, yeah, he did a great job with Ulick. He just... Veach, I honestly couldn't tell you.
Veach has, like, an internal, consistent, like, monologue that, like, strings everything together. I think he just says whatever comes to his mind.
Yeah, I think he's an
His
emotional
stories-
person, which is a good thing,
his,
because I think I think he's emotional, and I think that makes him a good artist. I think that makes him a good world builder.
He's passionate about, like, the things he's building. Yeah.
But because of
I
that,
think
I
just
think he
that
doesn't always
maybe-
consider what he's saying when he says it.
Yeah, I think it leads to a little bit of a lack of professionalism, which is probably why he didn't work for Star Wars too long. And he, like I said, I think he didn't speak without thinking a lot of the time. You get a lot of from writers, they're very polite. Even Timothy Zahn is quite polite about Veach. Veach was horrible to Timothy Zahn and about him for a long time. I think you're right. He's a very emotional person, and I think maybe he didn't get to write the Ulick story. Kevin Jansen did it. I think he was probably a little bit maybe angry that someone else had done that story. And then I think as time went on, he settled down and thought, you know what, he did a good job of it.
I can see that being the case. It's a shame. I think Veach had a lot of potential, but I remember someone once told me that it's not enough to be the best at what you're doing. You have to be likable, because people would rather work with someone who's adequate and fun than someone who's talented and mean. And I think if Veach could have reined it in and just been nicer to people around him and been a little less egotistical, he probably would have gone on to put out some really stellar Star Wars content. Because like I said, the art direction, the art style, the world building of Tales of the Jedi are all awesome. Like, I want to give props to Veach. There's a lot of great stuff about this.
A great example that proves exactly what you're saying is Troy Denning. Because a lot of the stuff that he did pissed off a lot of writers. He pissed off James Luceno, he pissed off Matthew Stover, all these people.
Both far better writers than him.
Yeah, but because it was because of his writing decisions. He was such a nice guy and so easy to get along with that he got to do so much. That's really why he's in charge of Legacy of the Force and Fate of the Jedi and all these novels, because he really got along with people and he was really easy to get along with, and people really liked him. The editors really got along with him, so they gave him all that power because he was a nice guy. That's I think like the opposite with Veach. He has some really good ideas, but he wasn't the best to work with, which I think is why people moved away from him. I always think of in Dark Empire, the artist Cameron Kennedy left because he said he was bored of the series. Artists are usually a lot nicer. I think that maybe hints at, I wouldn't want to speculate that I don't know what happened. Maybe they got along perfectly. But if he's, openly, publicly saying, oh, I got bored of it in interviews, of getting bored of Dark Empire, that's not a nice thing to say. He seems to not have had great relationships with a lot of people at Lucasfilm, which probably was just like you said, that emotion. He probably was a very emotional person and didn't, keep hold of it very well.
There's a lesson in here for the viewers.
We've got a lesson
look,
today.
Yeah. Well,
I think Veach probably was envious that other people were getting positions and power and trust that he wasn't, and he thought of himself as like more capable, more passionate, more talented. Regardless of whether or not he was or wasn't, you are given positions of responsibility whenever people feel safe, like they can trust you to have conversations about direction and changes. You're never going to be given that if you're hard to talk to and hard to work with, no matter how
it's
good
like,
you are.
and don't
I think
talk
there's a
about people
reason.
behind their back. You know, I'm sure Kevin J. Anderson didn't feel great about suddenly the guy whose character you took. He says, "Oh, you did a terrible job with my character."
Yeah.
And he said it like in
Yeah,
an
or,
interview to someone else. Like that's not the
you know,
way you want to find out.
when he called, the Thrawn trilogy uncinematic and said that
Which is just false, by the way.
I know, because what's crazy is the Thrawn trilogy for me reads so much like another original trilogy. It's like we're getting more films. Dark Empire doesn't feel like we're getting more films. Like, it's epic, but it's not cinematic because it's so clunky.
Yeah,
I
scale is not cinematic inherently.
Yeah, I think I very much agree. I'm just saying that because I had something really clever to say and it's gone out of my head. So I'm just going to say I agree.
Well, my one it would just be that the real world teaches you that people say like, oh, it's not a meritocracy, but it is. It's just that the merits aren't being good at your specific skill or job. That's a part of it. The merits are actually like charisma, ability to like stand down at certain points.
Kindness is part of your merit.
Yeah.
Humility
Kindness,
is
charisma,
a merit.
Likability.
Yeah.
These are merits
Well, I think
you have
it's
to have.
Talent
remembered what I was
alone
gonna
is
say.
not enough.
No.
I think what it is, this is what I was going to say, I remembered it finally, is I think there's a reason Veach doesn't have a story of having a one-on-one conversation with George. I mean, he pretends, he spoke to Lucy Wilson, and then he changed his mind that he spoke directly to George Lucas, and then he changed his mind again that he never did. I think it shows the difference between him and someone like Matthew Stover, because Matthew Stover got to sit down and talk to George Lucas about the Revenge of the Sith novel, and James Luceno got to talk to George about Plagueis. These writers got to talk directly to him and get his input, while Veach, probably because of the way he was professionally, he never had a proper, conversation with George. I think that...
Based on the timelines of the interviews I've seen, I think Veach said, like, oh yeah, I talked to George directly when George was like, still the hot dog. But then after the prequels came out and everyone hated George, and he was like, oh yeah, I never actually talked to Lucas.
Yeah, well,
that's when it switched.
When Dark Empire first came out, he said, I talked to Lucy Wilson. And then a few years later, it changes to, I talked directly to George Lucas. And then, as you said later on, it's like, okay, no, I actually did talk to Lucy Wilson. Like, it's like he really wanted to, say, like, oh, me and George are best mates.
There to be a link there, yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like a soft retelling of Star Wars in and of itself. Passion leads to your downfall, lack of humility. Yeah. And it sucks because I do think Veach is very talented, but...
A lot of potential.
What can you do?
Some of that, some of the ideas and stuff, we say all this... Dark Empire is one of the most influential, it is one of the most influential and important comics in all of Star Wars. It's so important. Yeah.
Even in canon.
And, exactly. And Tales of the Jedi, it's so important. As you said, Knights of the Old Republic, the games would exist, but it wouldn't be Knights of the Old Republic.
He made his mark.
They were gonna make a Star Wars game, but they wouldn't. They were gonna make because it just wouldn't have existed.
There would probably be a great RPG Star Wars game, but
we probably would have got like
a
Thrawn era game.
Yeah,
like
BioWare was given the choice between, I think, after original trilogy or like thousands of years in the past, and they chose thousands of years in the past.
Yeah, because tell their own story. I mean, it's that thing that canon rarely lets people do, is tell their own, original story.
Yeah.
Which is why I think the expanded universe and Legends, it appeals to people so much, because the idea we can read tie-in novels that aren't really tie-in, they are their own story, is really special. That you don't... I mean, that's what's special about Legends. You don't get that anywhere else, really. You don't...
No.
I think of Star Trek, like...
Halo kind of does it, but a lot of Halo's tie-in stuff is not very good.
Yeah, and...
unfortunately.
Because, for example, when when it was Bungie, the tie-in stuff was tie-in, and it was great. You know, like
Against
like
Bungie's
the
will,
original
but yeah, it
novel.
was super good.
Yeah, yeah. But you know, it wasn't that important.
Well, the Fall of Reach
that's in a lot of things.
was, but
Yeah,
But
again,
with
like,
the
they
Halo
didn't want it
stuff,
to be.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume, especially if Bungie didn't like it, Halo, the books weren't introducing things that you would later see in the games. Like, it was always the games came first, and then the books cover those.
kind of.
was it?
It was
Yeah,
actually
but-
more symbiotic than that. There was stuff introduced in the Fall of Reach that altered the way that combat evolved, was progressing against Bungie's will to make it consistent. And then there was stuff in Halo 2 that existed because of the Fall of Reach that made Bungie feel like they were being restricted from doing what they wanted to do because Microsoft wanted these tie-in books.
Okay, so there was some level of that, but I guess with Star Wars, like you've got
Reluctantly
these
symbiotic.
These comics came out 5-6 years before those games, and yet those games are entirely reliant on this. And I think it's very cool that you can have the visual media. I guess comics count as visual media, but let's say interactive media that relies so much on literature to have come out before it.
But that was the choice of BioWare a little bit, and then
Yes,
Obsidian a
yes.
lot. But that's also because Chris Avellone, I know for sure. But the people at Obsidian loved digging into the universe because they wanted to then see how they could affect it. It wasn't so much, I want to tell a story and I guess I'll use the Star Wars IP. Obsidian really wanted to look at Star Wars and be like, what is it? I need to understand it so that I can know how can I mess with it? How can I interact with it? Which is why KOTOR 2 was so deconstructionist, which is the best thing about it. The best thing about it is how compelling Kreia and her philosophy is, despite Avalon himself saying she's objectively wrong. It's the fact that she's so convincing even though she's wrong, because they loved so much the world and the universe, and they needed to understand it, which is why they leaned so heavy on the Veach stuff.
I always love when people forget that she is the villain of the game. They always
Yeah,
go, "Oh,
she's
it
wrong.
takes her so stupid. I can't believe we're meant to believe her." And I'm like, yeah, well, she's the villain. Like,
Well,
you know,
a lot
It's
of her
being
takes
I
I
can't
do.
believe Darth Vader kills kids, and now I have to kill kids because he did it. Like, it's like, no, bro, he's the bad guy.
But that's the reason she's a great character, is because when she's saying a lot of the things she's saying, you sit there and you're like, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no.
It doesn't mean
Like,
it's
her philosophy
correct.
It's meant to be, yeah.
She's
I guess maybe
convincing.
critical thought is not many gamers' strong suit, and that's where
It's not many
they're being
people's
hit.
strong suit.
Yeah, true. They're being
She-
hit with information that's new to them, and they don't know how to take it other than believe or deny.
One of my favorite conversations in KOTOR 2, this is a little off topic, but I do think it matters, is whenever there's that refugee on Nar Shaddaa and his wife has been kidnapped. He's like, I don't know what to do. And the Jedi moves to be like, oh, I'm going to go save her for you. And you choose to do that. And Kreia's like, you shouldn't do that. And then you go and do it. And when she gets back, she didn't divorce him, but she says, I'm leaving you. You're a coward. You didn't save me. And then Kreia says, you have stolen from him the opportunity to grow and go save his own wife. You think you did something good, but you destroyed their family because you didn't let him grow on his own. And you're sitting there and you're thinking, it's like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. That's compelling. Like, did I rob him of the opportunity to grow? Ultimately, no, the good thing to do is to go save the person in trouble. But it does make sense. It has there's something about that does resonate to us when we hear it, which is why Kreia is compelling.
Yeah.
That was
Exactly. And that's all the stuff that Veich was definitely not considering when he made these
No.
comics. No. But it's very cool that you can read these and you can see Onderon, you can see Duxon, and you can see all this lore about like the beast rights and everything. That all comes back like later in the games.
Yeah, seeing
That's
Duxon is
very
mad
cool.
cool. I love Duxon.
The KOTOR games were released today, people would hate on them so much if they came out how they look now, because everyone would be like, Onderon looks so shit compared to how it looks in the comic. Like, where's the, it's meant to be thousands of miles large. Where's like all the different back alleys and stuff. I think we gave early 2000s games a lot of slack in that regard, because I didn't know Onderon, like ISIS particularly, was meant to look this cool. I
Yeah.
guess you see it for like in a cutscene briefly in the game.
Yeah,
but,
you have to
like,
consider,
it's obviously
budget and
limitations and
technology.
everything. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, well,
But they didn't do a good job of giving a sense of scale. Like they could have still have done that.
the technological progression was so fast in video games back
Yeah.
then that every new year you couldn't believe how much more impressive it was than the games last year, because KOTOR 2 came out in 2004, I think 4.
KOTOR 2 was very outdated when it came out.
It was
because
outdated.
based on a game from 2002, 2003-ish.
3. Okay, let's use
Yeah,
KOTOR 1. KOTOR 1 came out in 2003. Quake 1, which was basically the first fully 3D game, came out in 1998. No, 6.
Yeah.
1996.
6, yeah.
So that's only a couple years apart. So if you compare that, right, you take that enormous leap in technology, and you look at, 2026? Compare a game from in 2026 to a game 2016. Basically, I mean, we don't see... The Phantom Pain came out in 2015. That was like 11 years ago.
I think there are some games released when I were a kid that
we're just
look
not
better than
impressed
games
anymore
released
like we
now.
were back then.
No. But ignoring graphics and ignoring... from a world-building perspective, maybe I need to go back and play the KOTOR games again. Maybe they did. But I never had a sense that ISIS was a big place.
No, it feels very
'Cause
small.
You can still give that sense without actually having to explore, the entire place.
But also, they made that game in 12 months.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the reasons why it is like that.
It was made in less than a year.
Yeah. But Duxton was very cool, and obviously you get to go to Frida Nad's tomb, which it feels like the Frida Nad uprising, like it ends with this cliffhanger where they talk about they've just moved this tomb from Onderon and they've moved it to Duxton and they've been building it on Duxton. That feels like a prequel setup for KOTOR 2.
Yeah.
Like where it leaves off, and you'd be like, oh, that's where we'll be going in the game.
Yeah. It would be really cool to read through this again right before playing KOTOR and KOTOR 2, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think this was definitely one of their main references for the world building of
Has to be, dude.
There's story arc.
There's so much in this comic that shows up in KOTOR 2.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. I was actually disappointed that we don't learn much about Freedon Nad in his own books, in the Uprising books, because I thought that was going to be a prequel of these prequels where it sets up, because he's 400 years before these games, but it's not. It's about like cultists who follow him, and that's the Freedon Nad Uprising. So it's not actually his uprising; it's an uprising about him.
You will see, obviously,
Like
Freedon Nad.
his spirit's there. And we see the Force.
that is the Freedon Nad story. That's all there is
Yeah.
of Freedon Nad, really, is
It's
the
just him
spirit
as
stuff.
as a spirit. Yeah.
I would really like to see his original story, but obviously that's not going to happen now because I don't know if he's canon. I don't think Freedon Nad is canon.
I'm not sure. No, Ulik is canon. We were talking about this before the show. He's made canon through a tabletop RPG game, and quite a few things are made canon in those weird ways.
The Galaxy of Heroes game? Actually, that's not canon, but yeah.
Yeah. I know, Gabe, you were theorizing, like, is that stuff, like, do they have to go to Disney and be like, hey, we really want to just drop this character in, we'll link it to nothing else, but we want it? Or they just like, we'll put it in, we don't even bring it up, and if they say no, then I guess we can get it past them. But if they don't bring it up, then it's good.
It's funny that if you like spoke to people now who like are in charge of like the books and stuff, whatever, they'll affirm, everything has to go through them and stuff. But I always think of Timothy Zahn like gleefully talking about sneaking stuff in all the time, and like there's a character called Booth the Terric, and they wanted to give him a Star Destroyer, but no way were Lucasfilm going to say yes to giving a smuggler a Star Destroyer. So Michael A. Stackpole said, "Oh well, Timothy Zahn is doing it, so I need to do it." Like he wrote into like his notes, well, this shows up in a Timothy Zahn novel. Obviously, he didn't say the Timothy Zahn novel that isn't out yet. So that's how he got away with it. So I do think there's an element of that, but I also think, who knows, maybe they want to sneak stuff like that in so that all the people that write news articles can say, guess who's returning from Star Wars Legends, officially coming back, and it's just like one mention in something like that, which you get that all the time.
There's a lot of that. Unfortunately, I hate to admit it, but I kind of feel like Disney ended up winning in the long run, because we're now to a point of such content oversaturation just in general, and so much like multiverse and stuff. I think that people just don't really care about like continuity and canon anymore, not like they used to, because there was a time when like the new thing would come, like a new book or a new Legends thing would come out for like Star Wars, and we'd be like, oh cool, what does this mean? But we're to the point now where there's so many canons and multiverses, and everything is canon technically, and crossovers. I think people
they have their own non-canon series called Tales of the Jedi and stuff like that. They're doing their own work of making canon so unimportant that there is no You're not hyped to find out like, oh, what this is, like you said, like what does this mean for the greater universe.
It's just such a shame. I think that like canon is such a fun thing. I think it's not just for Star Wars, but I mean human beings have been obsessed with canon. Like the Christian church here in the West had 300 to 600 years of deliberation over canon scripture. You know what I
Where it
mean?
comes from.
It's where the word comes from. We love
That's why I
canon.
always
We
think-
love
I always
continuity
think
and consistency.
It must have been crazy for George, especially when
Oh, there
people
goes my
started
camera.
fussing. Oh,
I'm still here, but my camera just died.
okay. I was gonna say, well, I think it must have been weird for George when people started fussing about canon, because at that time it was like a religious term, and he must have felt like people are starting to think of my work in a religious context.
He said that actually. He said he didn't
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
There's a quote of him saying he didn't
Yeah.
like that.
I don't.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think certain people would, but yeah, Lucas doesn't come across as the kind of guy who like sees himself as a prophet. So I'm sure he felt a bit uneasy to be like, oh,
Yeah.
why are these people taking it like that?
About
seriously?
about the importance of canon now. I think a lot of it comes from. I feel like there is a level of. I think the people that were all in for the Force Awakens felt a level of distrust because when they did the new canon, I think a lot of people, people who loved Legends, felt like George didn't care about it. So that when Disney took over and they said we're going to do a new canon, they said this one will matter. And I think
It
a lot of
doesn't
people
matter.
exactly, but a lot of people thought, oh, well, they're going to care about this one, so I'll get invested in this. So they did stuff like the Aftermath books. One of the things I remember, I've not read I've read a bit of Aftermath, but I remember hearing about they have like one of the main characters in Aftermath is like killed either off screen or in like a as like a total nobody in the sequels. And it was like a big mark of like these novels don't actually matter, and like a lot of the stories aren't relevant to the sequel films, or they get thrown away. And I think that probably is part of it as well. That the people that were all in for a big, important connected canon, it was just thrown away in front of them. That like, yeah, none of this matters. Like we've brought up a few times with the Acolyte taking a High Republic character on a different trajectory to what they had planned, which then had to change that character's story in the series. Some people think why be invested if they're gonna, just change things.
Disney's most successful show, Andor, the showrunner for that, Tony Gilroy, said multiple times he doesn't like canon. He was resentful anytime he couldn't do something he wanted to because it had been done somewhere else. He didn't like it. And it's not just him, by the way. There's huge swaths of the fan base, of every fan base, who actually resent canon. They think that canon is a restriction on an artist from making the art they want. This is a conversation happening right now with that new Resident Evil movie, because Zach Krieger is doing this new Resident Evil movie and it's not set in the game universe. It has nothing to do with the games. And a lot of people are saying, then why is it called Resident Evil if it has nothing to do with the canon? And they're saying, well, it's an homage to what it feels like to play the game. It's like, well, a lot of people want that. A lot of people don't want that, Some people love that. They're like, oh, this is an artist interpretation. But then you have stuff like the Zack Snyder situation where he did like Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. You had a bunch of people saying this isn't consistent with the source material. And you had a lot of other people being like, but it's cool. You know what I mean? It's really difficult to reckon with that.
To speak about Resident Evil, I always like to give, as a more casual perspective, my mum's perspective. She's a gamer. She loved Resident Evil in the 90s, and
Good
she
taste.
loves Resident Evil now.
Me too.
All she wants to see is Leon in a film. She's not interested in this new story. Like she's probably not gonna watch it because she doesn't care. She just wants to see the Resident Evil characters, done well.
There's 4 really baller CGI movies with Leon in them, though.
Yeah, but she doesn't like animation, so she wants to see like a live action.
His only live action appearance is terrible. So
Yeah. But like I guess for me with that for that Resident Evil film, with it not really being linked to the games, then I'm just like, why do a Resident Evil film?
I'm
not really
also
interested.
I'm gonna watch it.
That's just milking an IP. Like that's just we wanted the name to tell our own unique story, and that's the worst way.
Yeah,
to
just
approach
do.
it.
That bothers
just do
me a
horror
lot.
Film.
Just
do a horror film.
You're invoking the name of a pre-established IP for your own benefit. This is something that grates on my nerves a lot. I talked to my girlfriend about this a while ago, but I said that when an artist does art, he comes at it from one of two perspectives. Either he's trying to figure out how to make his art serve him. This is a lot of times we see this in music, but it's someone who's like, I'm trying to express what I feel so people get me, right? Then there's the other way around where it's like the art approaches the art from how he can serve the art, right? So that's people who are like, how can I make this story be the best that it can be, even outside of what I think about things? That's the difference also. It's not quite the same, but it's the difference between propaganda and art. You can have art that is meant to propagandize, that is meant to make you feel a certain way to achieve a goal, to influence you in that way. Then you can have art that tells a story that inspires and influences you like absent of the intention, right? So it comes down to, are you doing this to serve yourself or to serve the product? And whenever you have somebody like Zach Krieger, who I respect, I think he's actually a good director, making the movie he wants to make, regardless of anything that it has to do with the IP, and then invoking the name of the IP to take advantage of the popularity to make his movie perform better, he's making art to serve himself. He's not choosing to serve the art. That's my rant.
Well, I just think, my perspective is very simple. Just why do a Resident Evil film if you're not going to do a Resident
To take
Evil
advantage of the
film?
IP for money.
Yeah, obviously. And it's just like, that's
He
not what I
wants to
care
put his
about.
film in front of more eyes. The easiest way to do that is
Yeah.
to take a famous IP.
Like a
Yeah.
part of me
Well,
respects
like
the
for me-
hustle, but the other part of me
Yeah.
resents.
Yeah.
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 But
If
there's
you
no way
had
I'm going
trust
to
in
be...
your art that much, you wouldn't need to use someone else's IP to put it in front of people.
Yeah,
If you
and
truly
I just have
believed
like...
it was good enough to stand on its own.
Mhm.
But he
I'm not
doesn't 'cause he wants
excited
to have a better
because
name tied to it.
I would be excited if, like, say if they decided to do like a pretty faithful adaptation of like the first Resident Evil game, and it looked like, like they loved the game and they cared about it. I would be all in on that. I'll be really excited and I'd be going to see it.
George
But
Romero wrote a screenplay of exactly that, and it was great. And they went with
George
Paul
Romero.
Anderson instead.
Oh my god.
Have you not read
Why
it?
would they
It's on the
choose
internet.
No,
Dude,
yeah, I
no,
have
when
to read that.
they were doing the original, like they were trying to put together that OG 2000 whatever first Resident Evil movie with Mila Jovovich, George Romero was first put to it. He penned an entire
Wow.
screenplay, and it's
That
just
is
the first
insane.
game. You can find it online. Go read it, dude. It's great.
I'm gonna do that.
They
That's
went
insane.
with Paul Anderson's like fucky wucky whatever he did with that movie that has nothing to do with Resident Evil instead. But the screenplay George Romero wrote slaps. Go read it.
That's so sad. Yeah, because I've actually I'm watching the Living Dead films right now. I've seen Dawn of the Dead before, but I've watched Night of the Living Dead and Day of the Dead. I really like Romero, so that would have
they're
been
great.
sick. I can't imagine.
Those are classics.
I cannot imagine turning down Romero, who
My
the
theory is that he
zombie,
was too
like, guy.
expensive. My theory is that Paul
maybe.
Anderson offered to do it for a lot cheaper.
Yeah,
I don't know that.
should have. Yeah,
That's just my speculation.
yeah, that would make sense. But like you keep saying, Resident Evil, George Romero, nothing else compares. So why would you want to do anything else?
You
But
can
I get why, but
definitely read that screenplay. But the point of that is that like it's not just with the Resident Evil movie. It's happened with Star Wars a lot. There is my camera again. It's dying. That's all. But it's happened with a lot of IPs. It's happened with Star Wars a lot. There is this I think The Acolyte was actually an example of that. But there's a lot of people invoking the name of beloved pre-established IPs to just do the thing that they want to do
with,
and make some money on it.
with Legends,
Or to
it's
make
characters.
a name for themselves as well. Just like, this will propel my career if I accept this job,
Yeah.
even if I
But
don't
with,
care about the story I'm telling.
Very well
With
said.
Legends, it's like stuff that we like from it that they just put in and think, well, there you go, you like this.
They just
You'll
jangle
enjoy it
keys
now.
in front of our face.
Yeah, and it's like I always talk about, and I was talking to someone about this yesterday. There's a lot of stuff from Legends that you could canonize, but there's a lot of stuff that just like you would have to change so much that I think, what's the point in doing it? We just make a new character inspired by it, or like a new story inspired by it. There's loads of things like that, and it's like for me, I'm very much like I like a faithful adaptation. So of course for me, if you're just gonna take the name of somebody and make a new character, of course I'm not gonna care because I want to see like a faithful adaptation is what I'm interested in. Because I like that character,
Yeah.
I don't want to see someone else.
That's
The same
so
way I
true.
like Resident Evil. I don't want to see a different film that's not Resident Evil.
That's very well said.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did we have anything else to say about Tales of the Jedi?
Well, I was very cool that there's yellow lightsabers. This is pre-lightsabers having a meaning era, so the Jedi's have yellow lightsabers because it looks cool.
Yeah, I think there's purple in there as well. I think.
Yeah.
Does the what color does the what is his name called? Tot. What does he have?
Tot Danica. I think he has a purple lightsaber. Yeah. Also, why is
Yeah.
Tot Danica? I mean, he speaks English, but we know he should actually only be able to say Chida Wada Gada Dido Godo.
Muchu shakabaka.
Yeah, that's all he should be able to say.
You know, he does have a
That was a
Ichuta!
case of the dialogue being quite bad because at one point it says by the Twilight Goddess. It's like I'm sure she would have a name. She would be like, by the human
Yeah.
god.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah,
I didn't notice that either.
Maybe
is it
maybe
the first issue?
By the
Like,
Twilight
it's when
Goddess.
when the Beast Riders first attack, he goes, by the Twilight Goddess, they're chasing us.
you never know. Maybe his friends are really like culturally like they don't know about his culture.
Yeah.
And he's just like, you know what? I'll just simplify it for these.
Yeah.
He
guys.
still wouldn't exclaim it for their sake.
I know. It was just such a weird line. Like it felt like that was like what you'd have in square brackets. Be like, fill this in later. Like we need to come up with a name for this.
Hang on,
We
yo,
just
yo, yo, yo.
forgot.
Yeah.
I went and looked up the Wikipedia for Twilight Goddess, and its only mention is Tales of the Jedi and Star Wars
That's it.
Galaxies. There's
Wow.
one. I think this is just one sentence. Let me read this. Hang on. A
It's the
feminine
only mention.
A feminine divinity, the Twilight Goddess was the only deity worshipped by the Twilight people of Ryloth. Tot Donita, a Twilight Jedi Knight of the Old Republic,
Yeah.
frequently called out to this goddess during the events leading up to the Beast Wars of Alderaan. That's it. That's all we know about the Twilight Goddess.
Wow. Got a whole Wikipedia article off his one line.
I'm starting to take back
Yeah,
what I
that
said
stood
about
out
world
so
building.
much because I was like, that just makes. It's such a weird line. Like no one else would say that.
That's
By
Veach
the
for you.
Twilight
I think that's-
Goddess.
That is the perfect encapsulation of Veach's, writing.
Tolkien would never.
No, Tolkien would design an entire like canon for the Twilight religion, and it would
Yeah.
have its entire own scripture and language and everything. And only then would he write down by the whatever her name is and never mention it ever again.
By
Like,
the
all
elven
stuff that was in
goddess.
his notes. Yeah. Yeah. By the Mordor goddess. That's what the orc should just be saying. when
The
someone
Hobbit deity.
surprises them. Yeah. But yeah, there's some cool stuff like that. Crystals. The crystals are a story point for Nomi, and that's their lightsaber crystals. This is before they all have to be the same source now, the same type of lightsaber. Back then, the same type of crystal. Sorry, back then it seems like any crystal you could just use. Like you
Yeah,
dig it up,
but
you
it seems like
put it in a lightsaber.
Tales of the Jedi
Yeah, that's-
implies that some are stronger and better than others, and like
Yeah.
Young
the
Jedi
way
Knights
I-
does that too.
Yeah, the way I would imagine, right, is that as much as you can put any crystal in a lightsaber, there'd be a crystal that you could get like a really bad crystal and a Jedi would be like, "What are you using this for? Like, don't do that."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's the way I imagine it.
Yeah.
Non-Jedi and non-Sith can also build lightsabers. There's that the Freedon Nad like cultist, like he dresses up kind of like Freedon Nad, also looks like Vader. He has a lightsaber.
He does look like Vader.
It's not. I think he loses quite easily because they say like, oh, he's a Force user, but he's not trained or anything. But he has a lightsaber. Like he managed to make one, based off, I guess, just wanting to make one himself and nothing else.
Well, in the Jedi Academy trilogy, Exar Kun talks to one of Luke's students and just teaches him how to build a lightsaber. But then it's like he just builds a lightsaber, but it's never really explained where he gets the parts
Yeah.
to build a lightsaber from, where he gets the crystal, where he gets any of that.
Well,
He just does it.
Jaden Core, the main character of Jedi Academy, does it through a fever dream that he can't explain overnight on Coruscant.
I mean, I think Corran Horn, when he's undercover, I forget where he goes in the Invids. He builds his there. I don't know where he got the stuff for that. Someone actually does help him, but he's Corran, so he can just do it. So whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
OG Gary Stu. There was
It wasn't a special at this point. It was just a weapon that was seen that people would have from the more civilized age, and that was it. I guess they were just seen as swords, right? Like anyone can make a sword. Some swords will be shit and some will be better.
the prequel trilogy is what recontextualized it because you don't see Luke doing anything with the lightsaber in the OT besides like
There's
lopping
that
off
deleted
an
scene
arm. Yeah.
of him like kind of like screwing it with R2D2, but that's not really. That's just him tweaking.
In what with R2D2?
No. What I
Yeah. He's using the lightsaber like on R2D2 as a.
No, look. What I meant was that the Phantom Menace shows Qui-Gon like cutting a hole in metal with the lightsaber, but we don't see it do anything
Yeah.
in the OT that's not just, oh, it's sharp and like can cut off a hand.
Yeah,
right?
it's just a sword kind of thing. Yeah.
So that's it. My headcanon used to be when I was a kid that kyber crystals are what allowed it to like cut through anything, but that you could still have lightsabers with other crystals because I grew up reading the Young Jedi Knights and they use all kinds of different crystals. So my headcanon was the lightsaber would still like deflect blasters and could hurt things, but it couldn't like cut through anything unless it was specifically a kyber crystal. I don't think that's ever confirmed, but that was my headcanon.
I mean, I like that.
Well, I have my
There's
very own
also
specific
there's a
bizarre
character called
headcanon.
Andor, which I thought was nice just because it sounds like Andor. It's Nomi's
Yeah,
husband.
he's actually,
Andor.
Tony Gilroy
Lucky's
shouldn't have used
version.
the word then. It was already taken.
Yeah, it's already in canon. What the hell?
What was he thinking?
I
He
know.
wasn't.
Another case of them taking a Legends character for their own gain.
There's
Unbelievable.
actually
Exploitive.
there's another Andor in Jedi Search from the Jedi Academy trilogy. There's an Andor there.
Maybe this is like the John of the Star Wars universe. Like it's a very common name.
I
There's a
read
lot of
somewhere
Andors.
that Skywalker was like a super common name in the Star Wars universe. I don't remember if
Yeah,
that's
at some
true
point
or
now
not.
it was meant to be like Smith or something because it just
Yeah.
means like someone who travels the stars, which is like everyone.
It's ironic though because the Skywalkers come from, not being able to travel, being stuck on
Yeah.
Tatooine.
Is it
being
like in
absolutely
Game
nowhere.
of Thrones, like a slave is given the last name of like the place where they're enslaved, so you can have like snow and that kind of stuff. Is it like he's Skywalker because he was a slave from the stars? Like that's your little
Maybe.
slave last name now.
Damned to walk and look at the sky forever.
Yeah, yeah.
Long way from Star Killer.
That would have been harder to explain. Of like, why is that a common name? What trade was he working as in the ancient days?
A
that they were
miner.
killing Stars.
Mining gas
I
from
guess.
stars.
Yeah,
Or something. I don't know.
That's
You
how
can figure it out.
Tales of the Jedi actually opens. They were mining. They're next to an area that's mining from a gas giant. And I
True.
thought like, oh, that actually ties in directly with the last Young Jedi Knights book we were reading.
Yeah, mining gas giants for crystals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Did we have anything else we wanted to say about Tales of the Jedi? I think we just about covered it. I mean, there's not a ton
Yeah,
to
so-
go over.
You can see like where Obsidian got the idea for Darkseid making people ugly, because the king and the queen of Onderon are like they mention like, oh, she's 70, but she looks like way older than her years. And this was before it was established that like the Darkseid makes you that way, because like we knew Palpatine looked that way, but we didn't know like why, or the Emperor at this point.
I stand by that. I accept that as canon. That the dark side makes you ugly.
I think that's what what Vaish was going for when he made the king and queen, and he mentioned like, oh, she's 70, but she looks way older and they're way uglier than they should look for their age.
It's very
Because
that it's interesting. It's very much in like the post New Jedi Order novels, not a thing. Yeah, it's very. But it's weird. Those books end up taking like an almost pro Sith stance at some point, which is very. It basically it comes around to it starts like Jason is bad because he's willing to do anything to set the galaxy right, but then Troy Denning eventually just goes full on. Actually, no, Jason was right and did the right thing, and he was like that's where it goes eventually. Obviously that has none of the like decay in from it. In fact, they're all like very handsome or beautiful, or like
They
the dark
are.
side people, which is weird. Yeah.
The way
yeah,
I've
so
always,
I like to think that BioWare got it from. It was enforced by these comics.
I can see where that comes from. Honestly, I think there's a little bit of truth to that, because I don't think it comes from like bad people are ugly. I think it comes from dwelling on negative emotions, because there's real studies that show that people who smile a lot, they don't develop as many wrinkles and frown lines like in the real world.
But
But
they
it,
developed smile lines instead.
yeah, they do
But there
develop
was a more
smile lines.
positive. There was
Yeah.
more positive wrinkles.
But
yeah.
but there's a lot of research that shows if you don't smile, if you like frown, if you furrow your brow a lot, you develop wrinkles in your forehead sooner. You age yourself up. So I've always rejected the idea that it's bad people are ugly. I don't think that's the case. I think it's that dwelling on negative emotions makes
But it's not good
results
for
in
you.
it's not good for you. It results
it's like,
in
I always think of
negative aesthetic.
Whenever I had exams at school, and now I'm at uni, whenever I have assignments and stuff, I always find myself getting depressed, and then I get sick. My body starts to get
It's
under
really
the weather
bad for you.
because of stress and because of the unhappiness of doing that sort of having that work going on. I always get sick. It negatively impacts your body because you not being well up here makes you not well everywhere.
And think about what it would do to you if all you did was dwell on how much you hate people, how much you hate other things, how much you want to kill somebody, how much this or that pisses you off. That's literally the dark side. It's just going to make you like kill yourself with stress, and it's going to age you up faster. Whereas the Jedi is about breathe, relax, meditate, sit by a waterfall. I refuse to believe that doing that would not like keep you from aging. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's always been how I've seen the light side, dark side uglification.
It ties into the irony of all Sith want to do is get eternal life, yet they can't. Jedi aren't bothered about that, and they do. It ties into that, which I think is very clever.
Because the
Jedi,
Jedi,
being a decent person,
the Sith have to
you.
force it through like extreme, like either like chemical warfare on their body or like extreme manipulation of the midichlorians, where the Jedi just are.
Because
it's like that that idea of if you spend your whole life trying to like for example, if you spend dedicate your life to not dying, you never stop to live, to actually experience life and enjoy yourself. And that is really what life is all about. Which is why sometimes it's worth just not stressing about things, and just enjoying time with your friends and making time to have fun, because that is what life is all about. And you have to have both. The Sith do that thing of, they cut off all, everything else and just focus on hate. That is obviously going to be detrimental mentally and physically.
I think it has a lot to do with ego and pride too, because the Sith don't want to achieve eternal life. They want to achieve eternal life through their means. The Jedi are able to do it because they release their ego, they release their pride, they embrace humility and say, whatever needs to be, I will embrace. The Sith reject that and say, I won't embrace it. I'm going to figure out how to do it my way, and then I will brag about it. And you're never going to achieve it that way. You will lack the humility.
Yeah. It's the motivations as well. Like the Sith want to live forever because they want to rule forever.
True.
Where if the Jedi are brought back by the Force as a Force goes to help teach someone, they're like, oh, I guess this is what I'm doing. The Force dictates my life. Okay, this is my new calling for this period.
To tie it into Tales of the Jedi, I guess you can see signs of that in you, like the cockiness, the
arrogance.
I can do it. And the sort of, I don't need to think about this, I know what I'm doing, I know what's right. It's always, they say it in a lot of things. I think Mara says it in Legacy of the Force, I think, to Ben. People that say that they know right and wrong for sure are always the ones to look out for. People that are so self-assured and so, they think they know what's right and what should be done. They're the people that you should keep an eye on. And that's kind of Ulick here, very much like, I know what's right, I know what to do. I'm going to go help these guys, whatever. None of this other stuff matters. He's wrong.
That's what
He's
I wanted
completely
to
wrong.
say, actually, is that I understand, like, people say BioWare's writing for KOTOR, especially when compared to KOTOR 2, is, like, so black and white. But, like, maybe that was on purpose in a way. I mean, BioWare does that a lot anyway. But, like, that is kind of, like, how you see in Tales of the Jedi. Like, Ulick is written, like, a KOTOR player, like a KOTOR player's first time when they arrive on the planet.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought about that.
You're given a quest immediately, like, hey, can you go kill these guys? Like, yeah, sure, okay, straight away, do it, and then you realize, like, oh, that was a bad thing to do. I didn't even think of, you didn't even consider, like, there could have been two sides to the story. You just
accepted the quest.
Yeah, you accepted the quest immediately.
That's such a good lens to see that comic through. You're just like a player. Oh, here's the first quest. Gonna do it.
Yeah, that's literally it's so funny as well. His master says, like, okay, guys, you're there to like to form peace between ISIS and like the people that they've exiled. Like, don't immediately bring out your lightsabers. It's your last resort. And within like 3 pages of them landing on Onderon, they immediately got their lightsabers out to attack the Peace Riders. No question about it at all.
Dude, Top must have been like, what the hell, man? You're not even gonna ask what's going on here?
That's why Nika and Kay were like, are you right? Are you sure this is the right thing? And Ulick's like, guys, trust me. The quest giver said we have to do this, so it's what we have to do.
Did you not see the exclamation mark over her head?
Exactly. That's immediately what it felt like. And then, of
I mean,
course,
the
they
quest
were
is
proven
still
wrong.
on the map. It's still there.
So clearly,
Yeah.
the right thing to do is the quest. Dark side
Imagine
points
the
If you
gained.
want to
surprise when
get,
he
if you
got
want
to the Beast
100%
Riders
the
camp and
game,
there were exclamations at the Beast Riders camp, and he was like, "Oh no, they're quest givers too. I thought they were just more normal mobs. What have I done?"
It's giving off Tuscan Raider vibes from Tatooine.
Yeah.
It's like, do I try to reason with the Tuscan Raiders, or am
Mhm.
I just going to slaughter them for Zerka?
This comic was set up, actually, now I think about it, like a BioWare planet would have been set up in KOTOR.
Actually,
It
yeah.
was very much like you have two factions, you think, oh, this is the good faction, this is the bad faction, but nope, it's switched, it's the other way around.
Yeah, you got to figure it
Yeah.
out, and then you'll know whether you did right or wrong based on the points you get at the end. Is it dark side or
Exactly.
light side points?
Ulik got dark side points, and hence why he falls to the dark side.
It's true.
Yeah.
So it really was
Yeah.
great setup for his fall.
Yeah.
yeah, which is
Under the lens of a BioWare game that came out 5 years later.
Shows up and immediately does the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I guess we can wrap up the episode now. Do we want to give like final thoughts on what we thought of the overall first arc of Tales of the Jedi that we
Yeah,
experienced?
so
Very
as
cool.
much as
Like-
we can, as much as we can point out issues, I really enjoyed it. Great world building and stories. I think it's more the excitement of what's going to come.
Yes.
Moving to Kevin J. Anderson and getting Ulick's fall and stuff like that is really exciting. But when I first read these ones, I wasn't that bothered. Rereading it, I had a really good time with it. I do like the characters as much as I can critique Kevin J. Anderson's issues. I do think they are likable and interesting, and more like, because they're brand new characters. It's not like he's ruining Luke and Leia or something like that. It's new characters,
Yeah.
and I can get invested in them. But yeah, I do really enjoy it. Great art, a fun story. I think that's the main thing for me. It's fun. I really enjoy the Onderon story. I like the, like, as much as it makes the Jedi characters out to be stupid, I do like, that they're not actually good, and I like the big battle in
A little bit of
the
nuance.
war. Yeah, I think that's interesting. So I think it's a pretty good. Might not be like the most groundbreaking comic ever or anything, but we've got stuff. We've got good stuff to come.
I would say at least Ulik, Heldroma, and the Beast Riders is, because that's only 2 issues actually. So you can read it in like half an hour. That's almost a must read, I think, for any KOTOR fan, because you will
Oh, yeah.
immediately be like, "Oh, I recognize all of this. Like, this is great," and then you can continue from there if you want to. But like, I would say that's an immediate place to go if you've never done any EU stuff except for games. Like, a great place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I really, really loved the art style. I loved all of it. I loved all the way through the Nomi Sunrider stuff. All of the art style was really great. It was probably my favorite part about it, which that's kind of Veach's strong suit. And like you said, I loved all the KOTOR references. I loved seeing Onderon and Duxon. I'm very much looking forward to, and I don't say this as a slight towards Veach, but I'm looking forward to seeing Kevin J. Anderson take over, just because I'm such a big fan of the Young Jedi Knight series, and I'm really anxious to watch Ulik fall to the dark side, and then see the redemption later. So I'm excited to see that happen.
Yeah.
Yep. Same.
I agree.
All right, guys. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up. Keep it a little bit shorter. Next episode is going to be Plagueis, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think next episode's Darth Plagueis. So that'll be a good one, man. I got to get my ass back on that audiobook.
That might be a longer episode. That one we'll have a lot to talk
Yes,
about.
a
I think.
lot to
Yeah,
talk about.
that's going to be a longer
Yeah.
one.
I'll have to get out my signed copy.
Oh, flexing on us.
The novels just take longer, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. Make sure
Yeah,
that
thank you.
you are keeping your eyes open, you're subscribed and all that for the Plagueis episode. It's going to be a good one. I'm really excited about that. It's going to be great to talk about one of the greatest Expanded Universe books. And we will see you in the next episode. We appreciate you guys, and have a great day.